The sky of Calthrin 6 bled turquoise and gold, as if the planet itself mourned something that hadn't happened yet. The mist trembled across its crystalline plains, and the wind whispered through towers of jagged mineral like a forgotten melody from another lifetime. She stumbled through it barefoot, bleeding, glowing faintly with a lavender shimmer that marked her not just as alien, but endangered. Her name was Alira, and she was no warrior. Her kind, the Veyari, had long sworn off the violence of their forebearers. She was a language keeper, a historian of thought and memory, trained to preserve, not survive. But survival was now her only thought. Alira's body convulsed as the foreign compound raced through her bloodstream like a fire she couldn't douse. Her veins lit up faintly with bioluminescence, trembling with the rhythm of something far more violent than Veyari biology had ever been meant to endure. Just 2 hours earlier, she had been scavenging the remains of a human supply drop abandoned, and half buried in stardust and rock, as forgotten as the brief outpost it had served. Her people had monitored humans from afar, fascinated and terrified in equal measure. It was rare for their paths to cross. Rarer still for them to touch. But her curiosity was stronger than her caution, and hunger dulled her judgment. She had opened one of the cracked canisters without understanding its markings, without realizing it had held something experimental, something meant only for enhanced human soldiers in Earth's final interstellar war. A black market serum developed to amplify endurance, aggression, and survival at the cellular level. She had consumed it without knowing. Now her breath came in sharp, animal-like bursts. Her heartbeat was irregular. Her thoughts flickered between memory and hallucination. She saw colors that had no names. She felt her bones grinding into unfamiliar patterns. She dropped to her knees beneath the spire of a glassy monolith, vomiting a shimmering stream of half-digested alien flora and chemical slurry. Her fingers dug into the mineral soil, and she screamed not out of pain, but from something deeper, something primal. The scream echoed across the canyon and up into the thinning clouds, a haunting, fractured sound that made even the wind hesitate. In her world, emotion was rarely voiced. Now it erupted from her in waves: rage, confusion, grief, fear. Her senses expanded in every direction. She could hear the twitching of winged insects underground. She could feel the heat of a storm forming far beyond the horizon. And somewhere deep within her, something unfamiliar pulsed. Not quite power, not quite identity. A question wrapped in instinct. The serum was rewriting her, not just her body, but her mind. Her calm, scholarly thoughts tangled with a foreign sharpness. Her memories clashed with the growing presence of human war dreams embedded within the serum's code fragments of soldiers who had once carried this substance in their veins. Echoes of survival strategies, field trauma, defiance, and loss merged with her own identity. She wasn't just experiencing her body change. She was becoming something else. The Veyari part of her tried to hold on to parse this metamorphosis into language, into meaning, but it was like trying to map a thunderstorm using only a quill. Somewhere across the ravine, movement stirred. She barely noticed it, focused. Instead on the heat burning behind her eyes, on the foreign thoughts whispering about conflict and love, and the final stand at Cassiopeia Ridge. She knew nothing of that place. Yet tears rolled down her cheeks as if she had once bled on that soil. The stars spun above her. Her body began to settle briefly, but her mind did not. It was splitting, multiplying, awakening. She felt connected to something vast and grieving. The serum hadn't just enhanced her. It had tethered her to human suffering. It had imprinted her with a legacy of survival through unbearable odds, and so, when the human approached, drawn by the strange surge of biosignals from a crashed drone, he didn't see a threat. He saw something worse. Someone crying, glowing, broken, inhuman, yet unbearably familiar. Her eyes met his across the brittle terrain, wild and alien, filled with questions. Her voice cracked through the dry air, more emotion than word, yet somehow it asked the only thing that mattered. Why ... Do you carry so much pain? The wind paused again. And for a long moment, neither species remembered they were different. Asterisk, he wasn't supposed to be there, not officially. Sergeant Elias Ward had gone off-grid the moment his unit's deployment ended. They offered him repatriation to Earth, medals he didn't want, and therapy protocols he didn't trust. But he needed something else. Space, time, silence, he had. Taken a rover, stripped his tracker, and wandered across systems that the war had touched and forgotten. That was how he ended up here, on Calthrin 6, a planet once used as a remote supply point for covert operations. Now it was a graveyard of satellites, broken crates, and fragments of war never meant to be remembered. And yet that scream had pulled him out of his self-imposed exile like a hug through the ribs. Something in it wasn't just pain, it was recognition. A sound that echoed the dreams he woke from every night. The ones where he still couldn't save his friends. The ones where the burning sky never stopped falling. He stood on the edge of the cliff, staring down at the source of the signal that had flared in his scanner like a dying star. She was crouched among mineral thorns, trembling, covered in filth and dried blood that shimmered under the sky's strange hues. At first, he thought she was a hallucination, a side effect of isolation, maybe a guilt projection from the serum he had once carried in his own body. But she was real. Alien, yes, but not monstrous. Not aggressive. Just wronged. Changed. He climbed down slowly, one boot crunching after the other, his rifle strapped to his back but untouched. His hands were open, palms forward, fingers spread. He didn't know if that meant peace in her language. He only knew it would have meant peace to him, once Dot as he reached the valley floor. He saw her eyes wide, gleaming, filled with a sadness too deep to belong to just one lifetime. She stared at him like she had seen him before, and maybe she had, in some strange echo through the serum's memory traces. She opened her mouth again, lips cracked and dry. Her voice quivered with foreign tones wrapped around human grief. Why do you carry so much pain? Elias stopped a few feet away, stunned, not just by the question, but by the how. The way she asked it as if she felt it, not just observed it. As if his silence, his regret, his nightmares had spilled into her. What did you take? He whispered. What the hell did you take from that crate? She flinched at the sound of his voice, but not from fear. Her breath hitched. Her hands clutched her chest like her heart hurt. It burns, she said slowly, her words broken but beautiful, like a lullaby warped by static. It remembers everything. The cold. The fire. The way you screamed when you couldn't save him. Elias went cold. The serum had been designed to interface with a soldier's neurology, adapting itself through real-time trauma and aggression feedback. It learned from suffering. It copied survival patterns. It even carried fragments of neural echoes, memory ghosts, some called them. She wasn't just reacting biologically, she was feeling him, living his story through his chemistry. And still she hadn't attacked, hadn't run. She looked at him like he was sacred and broken all at once. You should be dead, Elias. Muttered, this stuff wasn't meant for you, not your kind. It kills ours half the time. She smiled, a small, brittle thing. I feel everything, but I don't die. Why? He didn't know. Maybe her physiology was adapting faster. Maybe the serum was evolving in her. Or maybe, and this chilled him more than any battlefield thought ever had, maybe the serum had chosen her, recognized her mind as a vessel strong enough to hold all its buried ghosts. I need to help you, he said, more to himself than her. We have to flush it out before it tears you apart. But she shook her head, slowly, like a leaf caught in wind. No, it's not just pain. There's music, memories, love. You don't love so loudly, even in war. He dropped to one knee, stunned by the clarity in her voice. His memories, his brother in arms, laughing before the strike. The letters he never sent. The prayer he whispered over someone else's body. They lived in her now, like stories retold through someone else's breath. And she wasn't rejecting them. She was weeping for them. You shouldn't have to carry this, he said, his throat tight. Not for us, not for me. But someone did, she replied. You did, all of you, and I understand now. The wind passed between them, scattering dust like time. She reached out, and though her hand trembled with the weight of unfamiliar fire inside her, Elias took it, warm, real, alive. In that moment, war, indifference, and pain shrank beneath a single human truth. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is feel and not run from it. The hours that followed blurred into a slow, dreamlike crawl through dust and dusk. As the turquoise skies of Calthorne 6 faded to a deep violet haze, time lost its grip around them. They sat together in silence, two figures from opposite stars, sharing the air between breaths as if afraid it might be the last calm they'd ever know. Elias built a fire from the remains of synthetic packing and resin wood, the flickering light casting soft shadows across her trembling form. Elira was curled close to the warmth, her skin occasionally pulsing with faint glows beneath the surface, like the serum was still shifting inside her, unsure of what to become. He wrapped his old jacket around her shoulders, weather-worn and torn, still bearing the faded insignia of a unit that no longer existed. She touched the patch gently, her fingers brushing over it as if trying to feel the history sewn into the threads. Elias didn't explain what it meant. She didn't ask. It was enough that she treated it like something sacred. That simple gesture cracked something deeper open in him than all the therapy files and combat debriefs ever could. They began to speak, not with precision or perfect grammar, but with effort, with emotion. Illyra's voice still shook when she tried to shape the alien syllables of his language, but she persisted, repeating words until they softened on her tongue. And Elias, in turn, tried to mimic her native harmonics, whispers laced with tone and vibration rather than consonants. They both failed often, and they both laughed, quietly, gently. It was a sound Elias hadn't made in years, and hearing it echo in the night beside a being born of starlight and song made it feel like he was touching something holy. What is your purpose? She asked him softly, staring into the fire as if it contained memories. Her voice was full of raw honesty, the kind that didn't carry judgment, only curiosity. Elias didn't answer right away. He stared at the flame, remembering his last command, the missions that left more questions than survivors, the blood that still clung to his dreams like a second skin. I used to think it was to protect people, he said finally, the words heavy, to keep the darkness from swallowing what mattered. But after a while, I couldn't tell where the darkness ended, or if I was just part of it. Illyra turned toward him, her eyes deep and shimmering with colors that human sight couldn't quite name. But you saved me, she whispered. Even after I took your pain, even after I became ... wrong. You're not wrong, Elias said fiercely, with more conviction than he'd spoken in months. You didn't choose to take it. You didn't even know what it was. And still, you didn't lose yourself. Most people would have gone mad. You didn't. You felt it. She was silent for a while, processing. Then she spoke slowly. My people avoid strong emotion. It is ... considered volatile, dangerous. We are taught to harmonize instead, to keep the mind quiet. She touched her temple, but your memories, they are loud. They scream and ache and bleed, yet they also hope. And I do not understand how something can hurt and still love so deeply. Elias smiled, weary and sincere. That's humanity for you. We break, but we don't stop reaching. The wind carried a soft sound through the valley, a distant keening, like metal settling into earth, the remnants of a satellite collapsing. In the far ridge, maybe, or just the planet exhaling. Illyra shifted closer to him, not out of fear, but instinct. She trembled again, not from cold, but from the internal chaos still burning in her blood. Her hand reached for his, fingers interlacing, with slow deliberateness. Her skin was cooler now, the glow less erratic. I see you, she said. The phrase was simple, but in her language, those words held entire galaxies of meaning. I understand your soul. I honor your suffering. I welcome your truth. And Elias, without hesitation, replied, I see you too. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know how much the serum would continue to mutate, or if it would eventually consume her. But in that quiet space carved between war and grief, a bond was formed stronger than survival, deeper than biology. It wasn't born from shared heritage or matching DNA. It came from the simple, terrifying choice to not look away from someone else's pain. Illyra, who had never known what it was to weep with another. Elias, who had long forgotten what it meant to be understood. Together, they made a promise in the firelight, not with words, but with presence, to not let the story end here, to not let pain define what came next up and somewhere deep inside her chest. Beneath the shifting fire of the serum's power, something else ignited, a strange warmth not hers, not entirely human, but entirely real. Asterisk morning on Cawthorn 6 was not bright, but haunting. The light that slipped over the ridgelines was a pale, aching silver, filtered through gaseous clouds that shimmered like oil and water. Illyra stood alone, her bare feet pressed into the cold dust as wind traced along her skin, carrying scents. A forgotten ash and some faint electrical tang she now recognized as the lingering trail of synthetic matter tech decaying into memory. The fire was out. Elias still slept, curled near the embers, arm cradled around his old pack like it held something more than gear, like it held purpose. Illyra's body no longer burned with the same erratic fire, but there was no peace. Something beneath the surface stirred, not just within her, around her. Beneath her, the serum was stabilizing, yes. But it wasn't neutral. It was learning, adapting, and not just biologically. Last night, in her dreams, she had seen flashes of faces she'd never known: soldiers, civilians, children clutching fractured earth soil in bleeding hands. Not just Elias's memories, but others. She had no word for it in Vayari language. But in the jagged tongue of human war, she'd begun to understand. The serum carried echoes. Not data, consciousness, traces of the dead. And now they were inside her. She staggered slightly as a sharp image snapped through her mind, her hands covered in blood. A breathless voice whispering, "Tell my wife I made it," then silence. The memory vanished like smoke, but the weight lingered. Alira knelt, trembling, her fingers sinking into the soil to ground herself, to remind her what was real. The whispers had grown louder since the night before. They wanted something, not vengeance. Not rest. They wanted to be seen. Elias stirred behind her. She felt his presence before she heard him rise. His steps were slow, cautious, heavy with the knowledge that her silence now meant danger, not from her, but from the world unfolding inside her. "You felt it again," he said, not a question, a recognition. She nodded slowly. "They are alive," she said softly, "pieces of them, imprinted in the fluid I consumed, fragments too small to survive alone. But together inside me, they form something, a chorus." Elias exhaled hard, ran a hand over his face. "They called it Echo Serum," he muttered, more to the wind than to her, not publicly, just in internal briefings. Said it was designed to learn from trauma, collect neural pathways, use them to enhance instinct response. But we all knew. It was more than that. It wasn't just copying what kept us alive, it was keeping pieces of us. We used to joke. Say, if you took enough doses, you stopped being just yourself. "You weren't joking," Alira said. Her voice was heavy, with revelation. "You created a soul, and divided it into countless bottles." Elias knelt beside her, eyes dark and clouded with things he'd buried long ago. "We never meant for anyone to carry it all," he said. "Hell, we didn't even understand what it was. Just that it made you faster, tougher, less afraid. But we didn't realize what it took away." Alira turned to him. Her face was different now, not visibly, but in presence, like she saw through him now. "It took nothing," she said. "It simply held what you could no longer carry." Elias swallowed hard. His hands shook. The idea that their pain, their terror, their loss had been stored somewhere, locked inside a chemical code, and that now an alien woman stood with all of it inside her, it was too much. And yet there she was, standing, breathing, enduring. He had seen his strongest comrades fall from half the weight she bore now. "They want something," she whispered. "Not peace. Not war, just memory. Just ... to not be erased." A gust of wind screamed over the ridge then, carrying with it the unmistakable whirring buzz of something mechanical, not theirs. Alira's head snapped toward the sound before Elias even registered it. Her senses were sharper now. The serum's design, working too well. Seconds later, Elias heard it too. Drones. Military grade, a recon sweep, Earth's forces. No, this. Zone was Book, then it hit him Black Star Division. Mercenaries. Cleanup crews. The kind that tracked failed experiments and didn't leave witnesses. He reached into his pack and pulled out a scrambler disc, his hands moving fast. "They're coming for the signal," he growled. "The serum must have activated a trace. They'll torch the whole region just to keep this buried." Alira stood slowly. The glow in her skin now pulsed with quiet purpose. "Let them come," she said. "They seek to silence the dead." "But I remember every voice." Elias looked at her. Really looked at her, and it struck him she was no longer just Alira. She was a vessel, a living monument. Every soldier lost. To that war, every scream and prayer and desperate hope echoed in her steps now. He rose beside her. "Then we fight," he said. She nodded once, not in anger, but in memory's name. The valley was no longer silent. The hum of engines low on the horizon vibrated through the stone, an ominous metallic purr that made even the planet itself seem to hold its breath. Elias moved with speed he hadn't used in years, muscle memory. Overriding despair, his fingers dancing across his portable console as he deployed scrambling nodes and camo drones in a wide radius. His voice was clipped, urgent. "We have 10, maybe 15 minutes before they lock our location. Black Star doesn't scan, they incinerate. They won't ask who or why. They'll wipe the signal and any life near it. You need to run." Alira did not move. She stood perfectly still in the center of the clearing, her body softly glowing beneath the strange dawn, like a statue carved from celestial fire. Her eyes were closed, her lips moving without sound, as if speaking to something or someone only she could hear. Elias stopped, chest heaving. "Alira," he said, stepping toward her, "we can still find cover on the other side of the canyon. I know the routes. There are caves. I'll hide you. I'll draw them away." She opened her eyes slowly. "No," she said. He froze. "No, they are not coming for me," she said quietly. "They are coming for us. All of us. Every piece of memory they tried to erase. Every voice they buried inside their soldiers like broken promises. They never thought the echoes would rise. They never thought they would speak again." Elias took a step back, watching her as the air around her seemed to pulse. It wasn't light, not entirely. It was a presence. An accumulation of the neural echoes. Not just data, not digital ghosts, something more. Her body wasn't just reacting to the serum anymore, it was becoming it. A living archive of human history written in pain and endurance. The serum had never worked like this before, never. Stabilized this way. But in her, it had found resonance. Meaning, a vessel that did not drown in agony, but turned it into song. "I won't let them destroy you," Elias said, his voice raw. "They are not just coming for me," she repeated. "They are coming for you. For what remains of your kind's grief. And I am the only one who can stop them now, not with violence, but with memory." Elias shook his head. "You don't understand what they'll bring. Blackstar uses orbital, drones, atmosphere rippers, tactical nukes. You think they'll stop because you remember? That they'll kneel to compassion? That they'll feel shame? No," Alira said, "but you will." And something shifted then. Elias felt it not in his body, but in his mind. A wave of emotion, thick and heavy, surged into him from her. Not telepathy, but empathy, raw and untethered. Through her, he saw visions of soldiers huddled under burning skies, of mothers screaming at empty cradles, of the last breath of a medic who whispered forgiveness for his killer. He felt it all not as pain, but as weight. 1,000 lives. 1,000 choices. 1,000 chances for humanity to be more than the war they'd fought. Burned down his face before he realized they'd begun. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you still think your pain makes you weak," she said, stepping closer. "But it is what makes you human." The roar of the dropship engines pierced the air closer now, the horizon blooming with artificial thunder. Dust blew in gusts around them, the ground trembled. Elias turned, ready to make his stand, weapon drawn, every old instinct kicking in. But Alira placed her hand on his shoulder. "No guns," she whispered. "Not this time." "You're insane," he said, his voice cracking. "They'll kill us both." "Maybe," she said. "But if they do, they'll kill every voice I carry. And they will know, in their final breath, that they silenced more than a target. They silenced truth." He stared at her, and something inside him broke, not in despair, but in surrender. Surrender to the possibility that maybe this wasn't about winning. Maybe this was about witnessing, about standing still when others ran, about holding the weight of every voice and refusing to let them vanish. So he dropped his gun and stood beside her. The dropships tore through the clouds, black as vengeance, engines snarling. Alira lifted her face to them and sang. A single, harmonic note that rippled the air. It wasn't music. It was remembrance. The sound of a soldier's final breath. A child's laughter before the sirens, the first scream. The last lullaby. And as the ships closed in, one of them hesitated. A brief, flickering pause in the machine's path. Not because they understood, but because, for a moment, they felt asterisk. The sky cracked open like a gaping wound. A thunderous roar splitting the stillness as Blackstar's dropships pierced the cloud line. Gleaming hulls reflected the jagged terrain below like metallic birds of prey. Angular and soulless, made for war and nothing else. Their underbellies split open midair, deploying combat drones and sleek, synchronized formation soulless machines. Humming with precise malice. Elias instinctively stepped in front of Alira, even though he knew he was no shield. His body was human, fragile, and entirely willing to be destroyed if it meant giving her one more second to speak. Alira raised her hands, not in surrender, but in declaration. The air around her shimmered again, her skin pulsing with soft light. And in that moment, she looked like no species he had ever known. Not alien, not human, but something new. Something born of both. The memories inside her surged forward, pressing against her like a tide desperate to be freed. She trembled beneath their weight. But she did not fall. "Elias," she whispered, not looking at him, "they must hear me. Even if it's the last thing they do." From the lead dropship, a new voice crackled to life over the valley. Tinny, arrogant, machine-filtered. Unidentified alien entity. Your existence violates Black Star containment protocols. You are carrying Forbidden's bio-integrated data. Immediate termination authorized under Interstellar Code 817D. Elias shouted into the sky, fists clenched. You bastards made her this way. She didn't choose it. She didn't ask for your ghosts. She is a breach, the voice returned. Coldly, we erase breaches. Alira stepped forward. Then erase me, she said, voice soft but somehow louder than the gunship roar. But first remember me. And she screamed, not in agony, but with the voices of 1,000 broken promises. The scream was layered, tangled in languages and pain, in lullabies and war cries. It wasn't just her voice. It was all of them. Soldiers who had died whispering. Names, parents who had begged machines for mercy. Heroes who had no statues. Children who had no graves. The valley itself seemed to bend under the sound, and the might, not fire. Not plasma dot, but pure memory dot from her body. A wave rippled outward, soft, golden, shimmering like heat. It washed over the first drones, and they froze, mid-air, mid-flight, their sensors overloaded not with hacking but feeling. The data they carried, once pure logic and targeting coordinates, now churned with sudden, incomprehensible emotion. One dropped to the ground in silence, its light stimming like a machine choosing rest over duty, but not all hesitated. The second wave of drones moved in a more aggressive formation, reacting to the anomaly with cold precision. Missiles armed. Plasma barrels rotated. Elias didn't think. He ran, threw himself into the arc of fire, dragging Alira down into the dust with a raw cry. Explosions thundered around them, kicking up shards of mineral earth, cracking the glass-like ground in two. Jagged splinters. Pain tore across his shoulder. Heat seared his side. The world rang with chaos. He thought he was dead. But when he opened his eyes, she was still there. Above him. Kneeling. Glowing. Her body battered, blood mixing with liquid fire from under her skin. She was holding him like he mattered more than survival itself. You moved for me, she whispered, voice cracking. Why? He looked at her, the edges of his vision blackening, blood soaking through his ribs. Because I saw someone worth dying for. Tears streamed down her face, hot, real, and possibly human. I've never known such love, she said. Not in any world. Then let them see it, Elias rasped. Make them feel it. Alira stood, her body trembling, her form barely holding together under the weight of the serum's power and the sheer force of memory she carried. But she lifted her hands again, and this time, the wave that erupted from her wasn't sorrow. It was connection. Flashes of Elias's memory spilled from her skin, his childhood laughter. The first time he held a book, the smell of rain on earth, the hand of a dying friend in his own, the scream he never stopped hearing. And then her memories too, her people, her songs, her skies, two species. Two hearts merged and the sky answered. For one breathtaking second, every drone in the air stopped as if stunned by beauty, as if the universe itself had forgotten war. But the ships kept coming. The voice returned, cruel and impatient. This ends now. And in the shadow of annihilation, Alira turned to Elias one last time, placed her forehead against his, and said, Then I will end it with truth. And she leapt into the sky, into the light, toward the ship's dock carrying every voice they tried to silence. She rose like a second sun, her body aflame with memory and light, no longer bound by fear or species or the fragile limits of a single mind. The serum had changed her, yes, but it had not broken her. Instead, it had filled her with the very essence of what humanity tried to forget, their capacity to feel through ruin. Her form cracked and shimmered as she ascended toward the Black Star ships, her voice no longer speaking words, but resonance. A harmonic bloom that turned pain into poetry, regret into requiem, memory into meaning. The war machines hesitated again. Closer she came, the more her presence disrupted them, not through hacking or force, but by flooding their systems with emotional frequency, faces, voices, final moments. It wasn't data they could delete. It wasn't noise they could mute. It was truth. Every line of code trembled under the weight of what it had been programmed to suppress. Elias, below, barely conscious from blood loss, watched with awe and grief braided into every heartbeat. He saw her silhouette become pure light, her shape diffusing as if she were shedding not her body, but her singularity, opening herself fully to the sky. Then came the explosion, but not the kind they expected. No. Fire, no shockwave. Just a sound, one note, impossibly soft, that rang across every frequency in existence. vibrating through the rocks, the ships, the stars themselves. And then a silence so absolute, it bent time. The Black Star fleet stopped in mid-dash air. No orders. No retreat. Just stillness. Then, slowly, each ship turned, not with mechanical abruptness, but with something almost hesitant, almost reverent. One by one, they veered away from the valley and rose, back toward the sky that had birthed them. And then they were gone. No attack, no final strike. As if they had looked into her light and recognized themselves within it. As if, in that brief flash of memory, they remembered being human. The valley was quiet again. Elias lay still, the bleeding slowing, his breath ragged but alive. He blinked against the light as it faded, looking for her, but she was gone, where she had stood. Only a faint shimmer remained in the air, like stardust caught in morning wind. And something else, a humming resonance still echoing in the ground. The sky, the heart. It was not death. It was transcendence. She hadn't died. She had become memory. Alira had chosen to carry every lost soul into light, not to escape the pain, but to redeem it. Not with vengeance, but with witnessing. She had shown them what they were too afraid to see, that grief is not a flaw, but a mirror. That sorrow is not weakness, but evidence of love. That memory shared, felt, endured is the most human act. Of all, weeks passed. Elias was found by his scavenger crew and taken to a recovery station, orbiting a moon lit by green stars. They asked him what had happened. He never told them the full truth, not because he didn't want to, but because how could he explain her? A being who had carried the very soul of humanity into the sky and turned back an army without a single bullet. He spoke of her only in fragments. A song, a light, a choice, but sometimes late at night, when the station went quiet and the hum of machinery softened to a lull, he would hear her voice, not in words, in feeling. A sudden warmth in his chest, a flicker of a memory not his own, a whisper of hope, rising from somewhere deeper than bone. And one day, he returned to Cal, Theron Gash 6. Alone. He walked to the place where she had first asked him, "Why do you carry so much pain?" And he whispered into the silence, "So I could give it to you. So you could turn it into light." Then he sat down on the same rock she had once bled upon, closed his eyes, and listened, not to silence, but to all of them. And for the first time in his life, Elias Ward wept without shame, not because he was broken, but because he remembered.